The warning. The command deck of the Starweaver fell silent as Commander Ilara Voss studied the holographic battle projections with growing dismay. The Viridian Coalition fleet, once a proud formation of 200 warships, had been reduced to barely 80 functional vessels. Their elegant formations had collapsed into desperate defensive clusters as they fought to protect what remained of their forces from the relentless Krell onslaught. "Status report," Voss demanded, her violet eyes never leaving the projection. The bioluminescent patterns beneath her silvery skin pulsed with stress, casting a faint blue glow across her sharp features. "Not good, Commander," her tactical officer Joran replied, his four-fingered hands dancing across the control interface. "The Krell have adapted to our phase shift to defense protocols. Their bioorganic ships are now secreting some kind of counter-resonance field that's neutralizing our shields." Voss suppressed a grimace. The Krell Dominion had always been technologically inferior to the Viridian Coalition, but what they lacked in sophistication, they made up for with biological adaptability and sheer numbers. Their ships weren't built so much as grown, living weapons that could evolve mid-battle to counter enemy tactics. "How many cycles until reinforcements from the Centauri outpost?" she asked. 17 at minimum, Commander. We'll be lucky if there's anyone left to reinforce by then." A communication alert chimed, drawing her attention. "Unknown vessel approaching on Vector 227 Mark 43, announced the communications officer. "They're broadcasting on all standard frequencies. Threat assessment." Voss kept her voice level despite her concern. A new player entering the battle could complicate an already desperate situation. The officer's expression shifted to one of confusion. It's a human diplomatic vessel, Commander. They're requesting permission to observe the conflict." A ripple of murmurs spread across the command deck. Humans were known throughout the galaxy, but primarily as isolationists. Their few diplomatic vessels occasionally monitored major conflicts, but they had steadfastly refused to take sides in any interstellar war for over 4 centuries. "Put them through," Voss ordered, straightening her uniform. The main view screen flickered, revealing the human female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair cropped close to her skull. She wore a simple gray uniform with a single blue insignia, the Earth Diplomatic Corps emblem. "Commander Voss, I presume. I'm Ambassador Diane Chen of the Earth Diplomatic Corps vessel Pathfinder. We've been monitoring the escalation between your forces and the Krell Dominion. We request permission to observe from a safe distance." Voss studied the human carefully. Their species was an enigma, technologically advanced enough to have developed their own FTL travel centuries ago, yet seemingly content to remain neutral observers in galactic affairs. Some said it was wisdom that kept humans from engaging in interstellar conflicts. Others whispered it was fear. "This is an active combat zone, Ambassador. I cannot guarantee your safety." The human smiled slightly. "We understand the risks, Commander. The Pathfinder is well equipped to keep itself out of harm's way." Before Voss could respond, her tactical officer called out, "Commander, the Krell are moving into attack formation. Their flagship is launching boarding pods toward our disabled cruisers." Voss turned her attention back to the battle projection. The largest Krell vessels, massive living constructs resembling nothing so much as spaceborne jellyfish, with chitinous armor plating, were surrounding a cluster of damaged coalition ships. "All vessels, defensive formation Delta 6, she ordered. "Prioritize evacuation of the Starlight Sentinel and the Voidkeeper." "Commander," the human ambassador interjected, her voice oddly calm. "I feel I should inform you that a second human vessel will be arriving shortly, the UESC Prometheus. It's not a diplomatic vessel." Voss froze, her attention snapping back to the human. "Explain." "The Prometheus is a rapid response ship. Given the escalation of this conflict and its proximity to established human trade routes, the Earth Defense Council has authorized limited intervention." The command deck fell silent again, this time from shock. In 4 centuries, humans had never directly intervened in a conflict between alien powers. "You're saying Earth is joining the war?" Voss asked, disbelief evident in her voice. Ambassador Chen shook her head. Not exactly. But there are protocols in place for situations that might threaten human interests. The Prometheus has been dispatched to demonstrate certain capabilities. A proximity alarm blared through the command deck. The Krell fleet had launched a massive barrage of bioplasma torpedoes toward the Coalition's defensive line. Incoming fire. All vessels, evasive maneuvers. Voss shouted. Incoming fire. All vessels, evasive maneuvers. Voss shouted. The Starweaver shuddered as its engines pushed it into a desperate dive, but 3 smaller Coalition ships weren't fast enough. The bioplasma engulfed them, organic acid eating through their hulls in seconds. Screams echoed through the emergency communication channels before going silent one by one. "They're tearing us apart," Joran whispered, his normal stoicism cracking. Voss made her decision. Open a channel to the Krell command ship. The view screen shifted to reveal a Krell commander, a mass of chitinous plates and sensory appendages arranged around a central core that pulsed with sickly yellow light. When it spoke, its words were translated by the ship's computer into a rasping, artificial voice. "Have you finally accepted the inevitability of your defeat, Commander Voss?" the Krell leader asked. "Supreme Overlord Sekthar, I am required by Galactic Compact Article 17.3 to inform you that a human military vessel will be entering the combat zone in approximately 5 minutes. This serves as your official warning." The Krell commander's appendages twitched, the equivalent of surprised laughter in their species. Humans, the great observers, the eternal neutrals. You must be desperate indeed to fabricate such an obvious deception. "This is not a deception," Voss replied evenly. "The UESC Prometheus will arrive shortly. I strongly recommend you withdraw your forces immediately. 1 human ship against our armada." Sekthar's translator couldn't quite capture the mocking tone, but his body language made it clear. Even if this weren't a pathetic bluff, what threat could a single vessel pose to us? "We have adapted to every weapon the Coalition has deployed. We will adapt to whatever the humans bring as well." Ambassador Chen's voice cut in from a secondary channel. "Commander Voss, I recommend you pull your remaining ships back to a minimum safe distance of 50,000 kilometers. "Minimum safe distance?" Voss questioned. "The Prometheus carries certain, unconventional weaponry. For your fleet's safety, please withdraw immediately." Voss hesitated only briefly. "All Coalition vessels. Emergency withdrawal to coordinates Theta 96 Mark III. Maximum speed." On the view screen, Sekthar's appendages waved dismissively. "Run, Commander. It changes nothing. When we have consumed your fleet, we will turn our attention to your colonies. The Viridian Coalition ends today." The transmission cut off, and Voss turned to her navigation officer. "Get us to the withdrawal coordinates. Now." As the Starweaver accelerated away from the battle, Voss watched the tactical display. The Krell, seeming to sense victory, were pressing their advantage, pursuing the retreating Coalition ships. 2 minutes until the human vessel arrives," announced the sensor officer. "Ambassador," Voss addressed Chen, whose image still occupied a corner of the view screen. "What exactly should we expect from this Prometheus?" The human's expression was unreadable. "A demonstration of why humans don't involve themselves in wars, Commander." The final minute ticked away in tense silence. The Coalition fleet regrouped at the designated coordinates, while the Krell forces spread out, preparing to launch another devastating attack. "Human vessel detected," the sensor officer suddenly called out. "But there's something wrong with the readings. It's like space itself is." A flash of light bloomed at the edge of the tactical display, so bright that the ship's computer automatically dimmed the projection. Where empty space had been moments before, a vessel now hung against the starfield. The human ship wasn't particularly large, perhaps a quarter the size of the Starweaver, but something about it seemed wrong to Voss's eyes. Its hull was a deep, non-reflective black that seemed to drink in the light around it. No visible weapons emplacements, no engine ports, just smooth, uninterrupted surfaces that defied conventional starship design principles. "By the celestial confluence," whispered Joran. "What is that thing?" On the communication channel, Ambassador Chen smiled slightly. "That, Commander Voss, is why the galaxy should be very, very glad that humans prefer diplomacy to warfare." The Prometheus moved with impossible grace, accelerating toward the Krell fleet without any visible propulsion. The Krell responded immediately, dozens of bioplasma torpedoes arcing toward the solitary human vessel. Not a single one hit. Some simply missed, curving away as if deflected by an invisible force. Others seemed to disappear entirely as they approached the dark hull. "Impossible," breathed Voss. "No defense system cooled." "The Prometheus isn't defending itself in the conventional sense, Commander," Chen explained. "It's adjusting local physics." Before Voss could ask what that meant, the human ship reached the heart of the Krell fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a sphere of utter darkness expanded outward from the Prometheus, engulfing the nearest Krell vessels. When it receded seconds later, the ships were still there, but changed. Their organic hulls had crystallized, frozen in time like insects in amber. What just happened?" Voss demanded. "A temporal displacement field," Chen said casually, as if describing something as mundane as a food replicator. "It accelerates entropy within a controlled bubble." Those ships experienced approximately 10,000 years of time in the span of 3 seconds. The Krell, panicked now, concentrated their fire on the human vessel. Energy weapons, bioplasma, even kamikaze attacks from smaller craft, all to no effect. The Prometheus continued its silent, inexorable advance through their fleet, that sphere of darkness occasionally expanding to claim more victims. "Why?" Voss found herself asking, unable to tear her eyes from the one-sided slaughter. "If humans have this technology, why remain isolated? Why not conquer the galaxy?" Ambassador Chen's expression grew solemn. "Because we tried that once, Commander. Long before we met any of your species, we nearly destroyed ourselves. When we recovered and looked to the stars again, we made a promise. Never again would we use our most devastating technologies in war." She gestured toward the Prometheus. "What you're seeing is a carefully controlled demonstration, a warning to the Krell, and to anyone else who might threaten human interests. The Prometheus carries only our most basic defensive systems. Our actual military capabilities are considerably more extensive." On the tactical display, the remaining Krell ships were scattering, fleeing in all directions. The Prometheus made no attempt to pursue, holding position amidst the crystallized husks of what had once been living warships. "Your coalition is safe, Commander," Chen said. "The Prometheus will remain here long enough to ensure the Krell withdrawal is complete, then depart. The Pathfinder will stay to open diplomatic channels if you wish to discuss a more formal relationship with Earth." As the human's image disappeared from the screen, Commander Voss stared at the tactical display, at the impossible black ship floating amidst the devastation it had wrought. One thought echoed in her mind, a thought she suspected was rippling through command decks across both fleets. "Thank the stars humans prefer peace." The revelation. Captain Marcus Chen of the UESC Prometheus watched the scattered remnants of the Krell fleet retreating through the viewscreen on his bridge. The black hull of his vessel absorbed the ambient light of the stars around it, creating the unsettling impression that the bridge was suspended in a void. It was a psychological effect Chen had never quite gotten used to, despite his 15 years commanding null matter ships. "Status report," he ordered, his voice calm despite the recent engagement. Lieutenant Commander Raj Singh, his tactical officer, responded without looking up from his station. "Temporal displacement field functioning within optimal parameters. No damage to report. 14 Krell vessels neutralized, 47 in full retreat. The Coalition fleet has maintained position at the designated safe distance." Chen nodded, satisfied. "And our power consumption? Less than 4% of reserves, Captain. The Krell weapons were Primitive by our standards. That wasn't surprising. Most civilizations in this sector of the galaxy relied on energetic reactions that humans had mastered centuries ago. Few had ventured into the realms of dimensional engineering or temporal manipulation, fields that had become the foundation of Earth's defensive capabilities after the Unification Wars. "We're being hailed by the Pathfinder, Captain," announced his communications officer. "Ambassador Chen requests your presence in a joint communication with the Coalition Command." "Put it through to my ready room," Chen ordered, rising from his command chair. "XO, you have the bridge. Maintain current position and alert me to any changes in the Krell movements." The ready room was a small, functional space adjacent to the bridge. Unlike the rest of the ship, its walls were a warm beige color, designed to provide psychological comfort to a captain who spent most of their time surrounded by the unsettling null matter hull. Chen settled behind his desk as the view screen activated, displaying his sister's face alongside the silver-skinned alien he recognized as the Coalition commander. "Captain Chen." Ambassador Diane Chen greeted him formally, though he could see the hint of a smile in her eyes. Siblings serving on different vessels wasn't uncommon in the Earth Defense Force, but protocol demanded professionalism while on duty. "Ambassador, Commander," he acknowledged. "I trust the demonstration was sufficient." Commander Voss's bioluminescent patterns pulsed rapidly, a sign of emotional intensity in her species. "Sufficient. Captain, you just rewrote our understanding of what's possible in combat. The Krell are the most aggressive, adaptable species in this sector. They've destroyed 3 major civilizations in the past century alone, and your single ship neutralized a significant portion of their fleet in minutes." Chen shrugged slightly. "The Prometheus is actually one of our older vessels. It was scheduled for decommissioning next year." Voss stared at him in disbelief. "Older? You mean your newer ships are even more advanced?" "The Prometheus is a Phoenix-class rapid response vessel, commissioned nearly 30 years ago," Chen explained. "Our current frontline ships are Lazarus-class, with significantly enhanced capabilities." Ambassador Chen cleared her throat. "Captain, Commander Voss has requested a more comprehensive explanation of Earth's policy regarding interstellar conflicts. I believe some context might be appropriate." Chen nodded. This wasn't the first time he had to explain humanity's self-imposed isolation to an alien species. "Commander, you must understand that human history is bloody. For thousands of years, our technological advancement was driven primarily by warfare. Each new discovery was immediately weaponized. It's a pattern that continued even as we reached for the stars." He paused, choosing his words carefully. 400 years ago, that pattern culminated in the Unification Wars, a global conflict that nearly destroyed our homeworld. The weapons deployed then make what you witness today seem gentle in comparison. "Worse than aging ships into dust?" Voss asked incredulously. "We call it the Gray Era," Chen continued. "For 50 years, what remained of humanity struggled to survive on a planet we had poisoned with temporal distortions, dimensional rifts, and self-replicating nanite swarms. Entire continents became uninhabitable. Billions died." The ambassador picked up the thread. "When we finally emerged from that darkness, we did so with a unified government and a solemn promise. Our most destructive technologies would never again be used against sentient beings except in the most extreme circumstances. So you withdrew from galactic affairs," Voss concluded. "Not exactly," Chen corrected. "We engage diplomatically, we trade, we exchange cultural and scientific knowledge, but we established clear boundaries around military involvement. We maintain observation posts throughout the galaxy and intervene only when a conflict directly threatens human interests or when a species demonstrates genocidal intent." Voss's eyes narrowed. "The Krell have destroyed entire civilizations. Why haven't you stopped them before now?" "Because those conflicts occurred far from human space and posed no direct threat to us," Ambassador Chen answered honestly. "It may seem callous, but our policy is clear. We cannot and will not be the galaxy's peacekeepers." Until today, Voss noted. What changed? Captain Chen tapped a control on his desk, bringing up a stellar map. The Krell's expansion pattern. Had they defeated your coalition, their next targets would have included these systems here. He highlighted a cluster of stars. 3 of those contain human colony worlds. We've been monitoring the situation for months, hoping the coalition would halt their advance. When that seemed unlikely, we dispatched the Prometheus. Voss studied the map, her expression unreadable. Finally, she asked the question Chen had been expecting. If humanity possesses such power, what's to prevent you from conquering the galaxy yourselves? Besides our ethical commitments, Chen asked. Nothing. And that's precisely why we maintain our policy of non-intervention. The moment we begin using our technology to impose our will on other species, we start down a path that leads back to the gray era. But you intervened today. We demonstrated capability as a deterrent, Ambassador Chen clarified. The Prometheus neutralized several ships, but caused no actual casualties. The crystallized vessels can be restored with the right technology, which we're prepared to provide as part of a peace settlement. Voss's bioluminescence flickered with surprise. You can reverse what was done to them. Of course, Captain Chen confirmed. The temporal displacement isn't permanent unless we want it to be. Those ships and their crews are simply paused. Understanding dawned in the commander's eyes. This wasn't just a demonstration for the Krell. It was for us as well. For every spacefaring civilization, the ambassador acknowledged. Humanity prefers to remain in the shadows, Commander Voss. But occasionally, we must remind the galaxy why that's in everyone's best interest. The tactical alert on Chen's desk chimed softly. Excuse me, he said, checking the notification. It appears the Krell Supreme Commander is requesting communication. They're ready to talk, Voss said, a note of wonder in her voice. After a century of aggression, one encounter with your ship has brought them to the negotiating table. I'll transfer the signal to the Pathfinder, Chen said. Diplomatic negotiations are my sister's domain, not mine. As he prepared to end the transmission, Voss asked one final question. Captain, what would have happened if the Krell had ignored your demonstration and continued their attack? Chen's expression grew somber. Commander, what you witnessed today was not an attack. It was a warning shot. Had the Krell persisted, the Prometheus carries weaponry designed to neutralize threats permanently. We prefer not to use them. After the transmission ended, Chen remained in his ready room, staring at the stars through the small viewport. Humanity's relationship with the wider galaxy was complicated, intentionally so. Earth's leaders had determined centuries ago that the safest position for a species with humanity's destructive potential was one of deliberate restraint. Appear harmless until harmed. Demonstrate overwhelming force when challenged. Return to peace as quickly as possible. These were the principles that had guided human interstellar policy for 4 centuries. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Singh reported that the Krell and Coalition representatives were beginning preliminary peace discussions, with Ambassador Chen mediating. The Prometheus would remain in the system for another 48 hours to ensure compliance, then return to its patrol route along the borders of human space. As Chen settled back into his command chair, he thought about the burden humanity carried. The knowledge that they could conquer the galaxy if they chose, and the moral obligation to ensure they never did. It was a delicate balance, this policy of restrained power, of calculated demonstrations followed by swift withdrawals. But it was necessary, because the alternative, a galaxy under human dominion, shaped by the same species that had nearly destroyed itself in the Unification Wars, was too terrible to contemplate. Captain, his science officer called out, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from one of the crystallized Krell vessels. Chen straightened in his chair. Elaborate. It appears to be attempting to adapt to the temporal displacement field. Its bioorganic systems are evolving in response. A smile slowly spread across Chen's face. This was why he had recommended the Prometheus for this mission specifically. The Krell's adaptive biology made them dangerous, yes, but also fascinating. Their evolutionary responses to new threats might provide insights that could advance human understanding of temporal physics. Maintain observation, he ordered. Record everything. And inform Ambassador Chen that I'll be joining the negotiations after all. He paused, then added, the Krell may be more interesting than we initially believed. As the Prometheus hung in space, its impossible black hull absorbing starlight, Captain Marcus Chen contemplated the irony of humanity's position in the galaxy. They had become the monsters under the bed, the shadowy presence that spacefaring civilizations whispered about but rarely encountered. A species so traumatized by its own capacity for destruction that it had removed itself from the game of empires entirely. Yet in doing so, they had perhaps found a more profound form of power, the ability to shape galactic politics with careful, measured appearances, followed by deliberate disappearances. To be the subtle force that occasionally nudged aggressive species toward peace, not through conquest, but through demonstration and restraint. It wasn't perfect. It meant standing by while distant civilizations fell to conquerors like the Krell. It meant making cold calculations about which conflicts threatened human interests and which could be safely ignored. It meant living with the knowledge that they could do more, but had chosen not to for the greater good. But given the alternative, a return to the unbridled use of weapons that could unravel space-time itself, it was the best option humanity had found. And so the Prometheus would continue its silent vigil, a physical manifestation of humanity's promise to itself and to the galaxy. We have the power to destroy worlds. We choose not to use it. Remember why.